to get more into the Phillies as they end their 2-game losing streak yesterday afternoon, and they start a 3-game set with arguably the best team that won't make the postseason, the Cincinnati Reds. Joining us right now, as he does each and every Friday, is Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad here on 97.3 ESPN. Bob, how you doing this Friday?
What's up, man? How are you? Good to talk to you.
Good talking to you. So, to me, I mentioned this earlier. I mentioned this yesterday. To me, Bob, I think that the Dodgers are the best team in the National League. So, to get out of there with one win after two, let's be realistic, those rain delays completely ruined the Phillies, in many ways in those games. I consider it at least not a failure. I feel like it's at least a positive takeaway that you came away and you didn't get swept by the best team in the National League.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, listen, when you look at the Dodgers' run differential this year, you're talking about a team that's outscored its opponents by roughly 180 runs. And then you look at the Phillies comparatively, and even after yesterday's win, I mean, they're basically being outscored by roughly 15 runs this season. So, yeah, I mean, listen, the Dodgers are probably, for my money, I know they're still trailing in the NL West. They're the most talented team in baseball. And to escape that series and sort of just tread water and grabbing a win there in the finale, I think was really important for this team. And, I know that seems like a low bar to set for a first-place team, but I think they did what they had to do in that series.
Now, what are your thoughts as well on the guy who ended the game on Thursday? The first couple appearances, Ian Kennedy's giving up home runs. You're like, what the heck's going on here? But it seems like he's kind of rounded in the form as the closer. So are you giving him a thumbs up right now, or are you still wait and see? How do you feel about Ian Kennedy right now?
It's funny because if you look at him from a statistical standpoint, he has an ERA over 8 with the Phillies right now, and you can't say he's done a great job. But I'll tell you what, even going back to last Saturday in the second game of the Mets series, Mauricio Rivera gets them into trouble, gives up the 3 home runs, and all of a sudden he's kind of thrust into the game. He gives up a couple base runners, but then he's able to bear down and end it. And, I think it's important to see a guy, even when he gets into a tight spot or gets himself into a jam, that he has the, mental toughness and the ability to kind of lock in and get the key out when it's needed. And we saw that again yesterday. Home plate umpire kind of made that ninth inning a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. Alfonso Marquez essentially called 2 potential strike threes, ball 4s, and it created a tightrope walk. But, again, he was able to bear down in a big spot, get the key out. And, for where the Phillies bullpen was at, to get somebody that has some experience and ability to execute in the ninth inning has been a big boost for them. And I think moving forward, you can feel pretty good about Ian Kennedy.
Looking ahead to this Reds series, to me, I mentioned this multiple times, this Reds team is a bunch of sluggers. I mean, Votto, Castellano, Jesse Winker. I mean, no one knows how Jesse Winker was for this year, right? I mean, what the heck is that guy? Where did he come from? But the Reds are a bunch of smashers. So to me, this is the series you got to score runs, Bob. This is a series that the Reds pitching staff is not elite. They're not the Dodgers, but they're not horrible either. So if you're the Phillies, you got to go out there and score runs this weekend.
Yeah, I've told a couple people this. If the Cincinnati Reds were playing in the National League East this season, they would be the best team in the National League East. So this is a step up. The Reds are not a traditional powerhouse. They kind of are in a situation where they're far behind Milwaukee. They're hovering on the fringe of the wild card race, about 3.5 games behind the Padres. And I suppose they could still catch one of those final that final wild card spot. But right now it's a really bizarre team because they're pretty good. They're offensively fantastic, but they probably don't figure into this playoff race. And if the Phillies don't come out and play good baseball this weekend, they're going to find themselves in a lot of trouble. Fortunately for them, with Zach Wheeler going tonight and then Aaron Nola kind of closing out this series on Sunday, the way that he pitched against Los Angeles his last time out for 4 innings, is very encouraging. So the Phillies still, I think, are in position, being at home, where they can win 2 out of 3 in the series, and that's what they need to do. Getting swept here or losing 2 out of 3 at home to Cincinnati, I don't want to say it would be cause for concern or, slamming the panic button, but that would be a bad look.
Bob Wankel joining us here from Crossing Broad right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. You can follow him on Twitter at Bob Wankel CB for all your Phillies conversation. Now, Bob, we know this weekend there's still that TBD officially on the schedule for Saturday. I believe we're assuming that's going to be the Matt Moore / 200 men coming out of the bullpen situation. So I got to ask you, how much longer are we going to do this? Is Zach Eflin coming back sometime this century? Like, what's going on here, man?
Yeah, everyone talks about the Phillies' schedule down the stretch and how it's so advantageous, and that if you're handicapping the race, you still got to love the Phillies. And I would bake on the Phillies to win the division at this point on the condition that Zach Eflin returns at some point because, no matter what they do or no matter how they fill that spot, it's just not good enough. I mean, whether it's Chase Anderson, whether it's Vince Velasquez coming off the IL, whether it's Matt Moore, whether it's a bullpen game, it's just tough to consistently have a situation in your rotation where you know that you're not going to get any more than 3 or 4 innings. And maybe on a coin flip, those 4 innings are fairly competitive. Like Matt Moore, okay, he gives you 3-4 innings, but is he going to get through that only giving up 1 or 2 runs, or is it going to be a disaster? So you can't really feel too good about it. Now, Zach Eflin is thrown. The most recent indications are that his knees were feeling, better after his last session, but he's been out now for such an extended period of time, basically since the All-Star break, that he'll probably need a rehab start or 2. And so I think a realistic timeline for Zach Eflin at this point is, the very end of August, maybe the beginning of September. So I would think that they're still going to have to take another 2 or 3 times through this rotation at the minimum with, some combination of Matt Moore or whoever else.
Well, the other problem is, Bob, and, somebody messaged us in earlier, but, when you got a guy like Mauricio Rivera coming in for mop-up duty and he gives up home runs left and right, like I said this earlier, like I would feel better about Freddie Galvis, Roman Quinn, and Adam Hazley coming in a late game at this point instead of Mauricio Rivera. Like, this dude literally just going in there and just giving up bombs left and right. Like, I don't understand. Is this organization so lacking depth that they just have nobody else to go to in the pitching staff at this point?
Yes, for sure. Listen, I mean, that's the simple answer, right? So, Angel De Los Santos is threw the ball actually fairly well yesterday in relief of Ranger Suarez. I know he gave up a run, but that I think was more on Andrew Knapp setting up a wild pitch on a ball he should have handled. But in any other world, some of the appearances that Angel De Los Santos has had this year would have him back in Lehigh Valley almost immediately. Right now, though, he's not even the worst option out of that bullpen. And, the fact of the matter is, you talk about lack of depth, nothing proves it more so than the fact that if Matt Moore starts tomorrow, the Phillies don't have anybody in that bullpen right now coming out from the left side. So, I mean, yeah, they are certainly thin. They need to get all of their guys back and healthy. I know that Sir Anthony Dominguez was fairly sharp in his first few appearances and then struggled a little bit in Reading last night. And I mean, at this point, not that you can necessarily count on a guy like him, but, man, the Phillies need a boost to that bullpen in the worst way. And, maybe it's Sir Anthony Dominguez. Maybe it's Vince Velasquez when he comes back. Who knows? But they really need some help there.
Well, maybe if they can put Velasquez in the outfield moving forward, maybe that helps their outfield situation as well, because we know we can do that. I mean, I don't know, Bob. Are we more confident as Velasquez the outfielder or Velasquez the pitcher at this point?
You could argue that his most memorable moment in a Phillies uniform over the last 3 years was when he was out in left field throwing guys out at the plate. I mean, you could certainly make that argument at this point.
But a more serious note, a couple of other injuries. Obviously, Hoskins is on the injured list. He'll be back at some point, we assume, next week. The Bohm experiment at first base. Bob, I'm scratching my head because, I understand if you want to go into a full offseason and be like, hey, Alec, you're going to play first base next year. You go into spring training. He gets all these reps at first base. I don't feel comfortable with him at first base right here, right now, because I feel like moving him from one side of the infield to the other doesn't really fix the fact that he's not a great fielder. It just it puts just another dude at third base instead.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, you saw it the other night when he started at first base. Everyone just kind of assumes that if you take a third baseman and you move him across the diamond, all of his defensive flaws are going to be fixed. But the fact of the matter is, if you have bad hands and you don't stay down on ground balls consistently, that's going to translate no matter where you're at on the diamond, right? And so we saw that. And then the other issue that you have, and like you said, if you have a consistent all season of work at it, it's one thing. But putting him over at first base, you could tell that he was unsure of where he was supposed to be. Which balls was he supposed to go after? Where was he supposed to kind of stay at home and retreat to the base? And so that was an issue. So you now have a guy that is playing with a complete lack of confidence, who is naturally not a particularly smooth infielder to begin with, and that creates a number of problems. Now, the issue for the Phillies is that, going back to June, he gets off to such a terrible start offensively this year, but he went through a stretch from roughly June 1st through about August 3rd where he was hitting .310 and an OPS a little over 800. But lately, his defense has been so bad that I think it's kind of snowballed into some issues at the plate again. You know, over his last 8 games, he's, I believe, hitting 190 over 21 at-bats, and he struck out in 9 of them. And in that Dodger series, I mean, he was just getting gassed up by 93, 94-mile-an-hour belt-high fastballs. And so right now he just looks like a player that's totally lost and kind of trying to search for it. And in the middle of a pennant race, that's not a good spot to be in.
All right, Bob, let's go in more of a big picture couple of conversations. I want to first start with you a topic that I brought up about several days ago. And since then, I feel like everyone is either completely shooting me down on this or basically saying, yeah, you make a good point. So we'll see where you land on this. So, the Phillies haven't had a guy on the same team win the Cy Young and the MVP since 1980 with Mike Schmidt and Steve Carlton. And I think we all know that as of right now, because Fernando Tatis is injured and because Jacob deGrom is injured, that Wheeler and Harper are in those conversations. To me, I look at Harper and I say maybe it's like a 50-50 that he could win the MVP. But I think the more likely guy is Wheeler winning the Cy Young. I think if Wheeler keeps doing what he's doing, he's probably like an 80% likelihood to win the Cy Young. The Harper MVP thing to me kind of depends on what happens with Tatis. What is your perspective on those two guys with the awards?
Yeah, I agree with you. If Fernando Tatis Jr. comes back and kind of picks up where he left off, I think it's still his award to lose, even though he's missing some games here over the last week or two. With Bryce Harper, listen, it's all going to be about, at the end of the day, the statistics. You're going to have that OPS, is sitting in the high 900s. He's going to have to continue to hit for average. He's going to have to continue now to hit the ball over the fence. He's starting to heat up a little bit. He went through a little bit of a dry spell from a power perspective. He's starting to run into some home runs again. But the biggest thing I think that ties Bryce Harper's MVP chances is really the Phillies making the postseason. If the Phillies get to the playoffs, and I think everybody understands that this isn't a great division, but the Phillies aren't a great team. And like last week, you saw Bryce Harper have an MVP moment on Friday night against the Mets with that late home run. And yesterday with a skeleton lineup that isn't hitting right now. They've only scored 7 runs over their last 4 games. He hits a huge solo home run early to kind of lets them breathe. He gives them their first lead of that series. If Bryce Harper can keep the statistics up and have those moments from a narrative standpoint, MVP voters are going to buy into that. And I don't think it really matters that he has a lack of RBIs this season. Like, I know you look at the run production and you just say, like, how can you take a guy that's in the middle of the order who's supposed to be a run producer, and he might finish the season with 65, 70 RBIs when it's all said and done. Like, how can you make him MVP? But the numbers across the board are so strong. But again, you got to get beyond Tatis. Now, with Wheeler, I don't think that the Phillies have to make the postseason for Zach Wheeler to be the NL Cy Young. The numbers speak for themselves. He leads, Major League Baseball in strikeouts, innings pitched. He's been an absolute horse when you look at the advanced metrics like WAR. He's a clear leader by that metric, that measurement. I mean, he's been awesome. So barring a collapse over the last 6 weeks from Zach Wheeler, 6-7 weeks here, I think that he's very well positioned to win the Cy Young Award.
Yeah, the thing with Harper is, I feel like I'm in an ESPN documentary here, but what if I told you that he's second in the National League in on-base percentage, he's 4th in slugging percentage, and if people who love the metric numbers, he's 4th in the National League in runs created. So, if you take away, the traditional home runs and RBI and go with the other numbers, he's clearly having a very good year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think somebody wrote today, it was either in the Daily News or the Inquirer, somebody said that Bryce Harper, I believe, has as many RBIs this season as Alec Boehm. And so when you look at it that way, you go, wait a minute, that can't be your MVP. But like you said, you look at these more modernized numbers now, runs created, on-base average, OPS, which isn't, an advanced metric by any means. But
right.
When you look at those numbers, I mean, you see that he is one of the 5 best hitters in baseball this season. You can't argue it.
All right, at Bob Wankel CB, I think you were a little controversial last night in your opinions. Listen, and I agree with you in the Field of Dreams. I think the movie's a little overrated. So I don't think you're missing that much not seeing the movie, okay? I got to admit, to me, the best Kevin Costner baseball movie is For the Love of the Game.
Because Billy Chapel. Absolutely.
Exactly, but it's also because it's the most believable. It's the most realistic. Like, no offense to Bull Durham, but like, if you take away the famous people who are in that movie, and I told you the baseball movie is about a woman who has an affair with a baseball player every year, and she kind of falls in love with one of them, you don't really care about the movie, right? Like, I feel like Bull Durham, if you strip away the great actors, it's not the same. And Field of Dreams, realistically, I mean, that movie is more nostalgia than it is like legend. So to me, I can't blame you for the Field of Dreams. But what I do agree with you on is I like what you said about you don't want it to become the Winter Classic. Because to me, what made the Field of Dreams cool is that it was the Yankees and the White Sox. If it was the Diamondbacks and the Marlins, nobody cares. It has to be teams that are all like pre-World War II era. You can't you want to put the Philadelphia A uniforms on the A's and send them out there. I'm cool with that. Tell the manager to look like Connie Mack. I'm cool with that. It can't be the Twins. Can't be the Rockies. It can't be any of these modern teams. It only has to be that handful of teams that are like pre-World War II, and I'm cool with it.
I'm right there with you. Listen, Major League Baseball doesn't get a lot right. You know, everyone wants to criticize Major League Baseball. They don't get it. They don't know how to market their game. But they knocked it out of the park, I thought, last night. With that telecast, I thought everything was A+. I thought that it was, hey, listen, it was a great game also, and that helped. But, that aside, the competitive element of the side, just the aesthetics of it, you had Tom Verducci with the hat, like the old-timey wardrobe. I really liked what they did. But, the thing that you run into with anything when you have success with it is you want to build on it and you want to run it back and you want to add to it. And I thought the simplicity of the field and the broadcast and, like you said, using your more vintage teams, it just gave it a certain feel. And, I guess I'm skeptical by nature, but I have a feeling over time they'll oversaturate the product and they'll somehow water it down and cheapen it.
Well, let's be realistic. Baseball is infamous for ruining a good thing, right? Like, when interleague play first came along, it was cool, right? Like, it was fun, but it wasn't every weekend. Now there's so much of it, you just don't care anymore. Like, you don't care the same way. Like, when the Phillies would play the Angels, it would be like, oh, we haven't seen this in forever. Now it happens like every 4 years. So baseball is infamous for ruining a good thing.
Yeah, especially interleague play. They used to section off a part of the schedule where they would cross over. Now, teams are like opening the season against, AL, NL matchups. And it's like, well, that I think takes a lot of the intrigue out of it for sure.
Also, I got to ask you now, you mentioned some of the baseball movies you have seen on Twitter. Now, was that your list of favorite baseball movies or your go-to baseball movies? Like, how does that work? Because I don't want to misquantify what you were saying on Twitter, because Twitter is infamous for, misinterpreting things.
Yeah, you can lose the nuance a little bit. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's not the definitive list of movies I've seen or necessarily in order how I'd rank them out. I've just never seen Field of Dreams. And people go, you can't be a baseball guy if you've never seen Field of Dreams. But listen, for whatever reason, I don't know. It's like it never came on when I was sitting on the couch when I was little. It kind of missed me. I don't know. But so for me growing up, I was always a big Sandlot guy. I loved, Little Big League. I loved Rookie of the Year. I think for me, my favorite baseball movies, though, are Major League 1 and 2. And I know that 1 is people that are movie purists say that 1 is far superior, but I actually think 2 kind of holds its weight as well. So those are my favorite movies. I've seen them probably no less than 50 times a piece, but I just haven't gotten around to Field of Dreams. I'm kind of with you, though, on For Love of the Game. I didn't add that to my tweet at the time, but that's a good one, man. You have Kelly Preston, Kevin Costner, Vince Scully doing the dramatic perfect game pursuit in his last start at Yankee Stadium. That's a great movie. I mean, it's like a little hokey, a little corny, but yeah, it's a good film.
But it's like Draft Day. Like it's a Kevin Costner movie where it's close enough to the real thing for you to enjoy it, but not too close where like reality ruins it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm with you. So I mean, like there's a whole list. A lot of people are like, what about Angels in the Outfield? Same thing. Like I watch Rookie of the Year all the time. I really like Little Big League where the kid becomes the manager of the Twins. But Angels in the Outfield, same thing. It just never really stuck with me. I think I saw like half of it once.
What about the movie The Rookie, where the story of Jim Morris?
Yeah. Is that what's his name?
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid. Yeah, good movie. Yeah. That was like probably that came out maybe like roughly 20 years ago now.
Oh yeah, that was definitely like 20 some years ago at this point.
Yeah, I was probably like in high school when that came out. Decent movie. Yeah, I mean again, a realistic element to it. So
All right. So at least I just wanted to make sure people had some clarity on what you were saying on Twitter, because sometimes when tweets pop off at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, people are like, oh my goodness, what is it? And so I got you. I got you.
I love it. You send out a tweet like that and people are like mean. They're like,
oh yeah.
What do you mean you've never seen it? Like, you're an idiot. How can you disrespect that movie like that? I'm like, I'm not disrespecting it. I've just never seen it before. But 10, 11 o'clock at night, you fire off a tweet, you figure some people, especially with the Eagles last night, probably throwing back a few, so everyone gets a little bit of edge, gets a little angrier, and they take their shots.
All right, speaking of throwing a few back, it is Happy Hour Friday. Every Friday when I'm filling for Mike Gill, I like to ask people, what are they consuming this weekend? So, Bob Wankel, what are you tapping into this weekend?
I got to cover the Phillies tonight, so I'll be down at the stadium, so no beers tonight. But given the recent run of very hot weather here, I'll probably go and I'll kind of go cliche and roll with Corona Light probably tomorrow on my day off. We'll probably throw back about 6 to 12 of those bad boys and just hang out.
Okay, I'm a Corona Light guy, so I can work with you there. Now, my question, though, is, so we've been having a back and forth. So we had a texter earlier said that he's rolling with Sailor Jerry rum infused with watermelon.
Okay.
What is your position on the watermelon for drinks? Because I feel like that's a very hit or miss niche kind of drink.
Hey, I'm not telling anybody what they can and cannot like. So who am I to criticize, right? But I've always just been I usually keep it pretty simple. I usually keep it beer. So like I've talked to Mike before, I'm a little bit of an IPA guy, but I'll mix it up and can throw back a regular light beer too. I'm a big beer fan, though. I've never really strayed from it. So I don't know, mixed drinks and all that stuff, to each their own. I'm not a seltzer guy either, but watermelon's not for me, but hey, it can be for somebody else.
All right. I think that was the most professional, upstanding analysis we've got on that topic so far in the show. So there you go. Bob Wankel, at Bob Wankel CB on Twitter for all your Phillies and more on the Twitter sphere over at Crossing Broad, the website covering the Phillies. And he joins us every Monday and Friday. Bob, enjoy the weekend with the Phillies, and we'll catch up with you Monday.
All right. Talk to you, Josh.